This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Cass Midgley.
We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge
$1 million
or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast, or leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 224 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. I'm going to die. A big thanks to each and every one of our Patreon and PayPal supporters. My guest today is Ryan Bell. Ryan is a former Seventh-day Adventist pastor who became an atheist after an experiment where he took a year as a year without God. He's publicly spoken about his experience before, during, and after that year, and he wrote about it in his blog, Year Without God, hosted by Patheos. He's a regular contributor at the Huffington Post, and in August 2015 launched a new blog called Life After God. He currently serves as the National Organizing Manager for the Secular Student Alliance, an organization that empowers secular students on college campuses across the U.S. to proudly express their identity, build welcoming communities, promote secular values, and set a course for lifelong activism. Ryan is also the Humanist Chaplain at the University of Southern California. His story of gradual deconversion was covered by national and international news outlets, including CNN, NPR, the BBC, CBC, and LA Times. He received a Master of Divinity degree from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and a Doctor of Ministry in Missional Leadership from Fuller Theological. Ryan is a writer, educator, and public speaker, and has expertise in subjects ranging from religion, intercultural communication, bioethics, and brewing coffee. Before we get into my talk with Ryan, I don't usually use this platform to make arguments for or against the existence of God. As the title exclaims, no one knows, and thus when it comes to whether a being started the Big Bang or is somehow involved in the affairs of life on Earth, no one knows. But it all very much smacks of human origin, human imagination, and projection. All the theistic gods are far too anthropomorphic or human-like to be unknowable, unimaginable, ineffable. That's where I'd like to leave God, as a mystery that is so ethereal that even if he, she, it exists, it doesn't make a difference. So at the end of the day, life is happening exactly as it would if there were no God. So let's just get on living it without God. In fact, the banner of the Life After God Facebook that I was looking up this week reads this: ended relationship with God. It was time. That's why some of us call ourselves atheists, because who gives a fuck? I've often said that atheism is the best practice of theism, because if we got on with the reality of living life and the struggles of being human and stopped looking to the heavens for help or guidance, we'd fix our goddamn problems, which is what a good God would want. But I bring this up today because I was shocked by something this week that reminded me of the strength of the argument against the existence of God that is best known as the problem of evil. And as you know, I'm an unapologetic lover of what it means to be human. Sure, I could easily hate it, hate humans, and hate how hard my fucking life is, but then I'm left with contrasting that with the alternative, which is utter nothingness, unconsciousness, zilch, no experience whatsoever. So yeah, if I've got to be here, or should I say I get to be here, let's do this. Let's love one another and make the best of things. But because I know that day is coming when I will fade to black, I'm also learning what battles to pick, what's important, what's not, and for damn sure, God is not. And that's how I think she likes it. In that I love being human, most of all, I love orgasm. I love cold fried chicken, snow skiing, watching the Final Four, sorting out shit in my brain while mowing the lawn, Donald Fagen's music, and most of all, sex. I love the celebration of our bodies as the vehicle that carries us around and as playgrounds for each other's pleasure. I love it when people can be naked and not overly conscious of being naked. I love watching people fuck, all right? But a couple of times in my life, while exploring the internet for naked people enjoying themselves, I have accidentally stumbled onto some very horrific, tragic, despicable, evil shit. Shocking. The kind that is heartbreaking and utterly devastating to the poor soul that sees it and can't unsee it, but even more so, the real human being to which this inhumane treatment is being imposed. And that happened. That thing that I'm seeing, it actually happened. It's being videotaped, and I can't unsee it. So where my mind goes is it's happening right now, somewhere in the world, maybe thousands of places in the world. Bedrooms, hotel rooms, back rooms, locked basements, involving children even, sex trafficking and rape. It's all happening right now, and God ain't doing shit about it. Then my mind goes to the few times that my own cigarette has brushed against my arm, and how quickly and surprisingly painful that is, and how some parents do that on purpose to their own children, and God does nothing. And there's thousands of parents out there that I don't think have any business being a parent. And the unfairness of innocent children being introduced into a world that they didn't have any say in entering, to parents they didn't choose, into bodies they didn't choose. Who we are on earth is a total lottery. No justice to it whatsoever. I have a nurse friend who worked in a children's hospital for years before it took a toll on her and she had to change careers. Right now, as we speak, countless unspeakable evils are happening to millions of people. Out of the 7 billion, that's not a stretch. As we speak, millions of people are screaming in horror and pain. Hell, this week, Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was said to have been murdered by dismembering him while he was still alive. And it's said to have taken him 7 minutes to die, and probably with no limbs. I don't know, but I'm just saying God did nothing. And it happens every second of every day, and for 200,000 years. Historically, this is the least violent century in human history. Unimaginable evil has happened every second of every day around the world for over 200,000 years. And if any of us were all-powerful, even as unloving and selfish as we are, as humans, compared to the alleged all-knowing, all-loving character of God, we would have done something, or gone insane. And yet God does nothing. Any of us would have been a better God than that, and put a stop to it. Even if it meant putting a stop to all life, fuck it, we'd do it, to stop the screams, and suffering, and injustice. We'd at least scrap this fucking disaster, and start over with a better plan. So yeah, there is no God in this God-forsaken universe. It's just us here. I got behind a car this week with a bumper sticker that said, "Protected by angels," and I just wanted to ram it, just to show how delusional, childish, and cowardly that mindset is. Wake up. That kind of stupidity and magic thinking is why these same evangelicals elected one of the worst specimens of a human being on the planet to the highest office on the planet. Because God's going to save us, and he's going to use the weak things of the world to confound the wise. those liberals, those smarty pants, educated libtards. We'll show them with Trump. They think they can solve our problems with getting smarter and education and science and thinking and working together and cooperating and caring. All those good things are just filthy rags to God, a God who wants glory, who wants to show off. And the more incompetent the human being is that God uses, the more credit God gets. This is not a game. This is not make-believe. We're here, we're real, evil is real, and humans are doing it. And if we're going to make this world tolerable, it will be humans that fix it. Because the only thing that stops a bad man with a God is good people without one. We taped this conversation on October 8th, 2018. The intro music is by Dave Weckl, called Just Groove Me. The segue music on this episode is titled Dudes by David Mead. You can learn more about Ryan Bell and his work at lifeaftergod.org or their Facebook site, Our Life After God. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is. Hey.
Hello.
What's up?
Here I am.
Good to see your face, man. Long time no see.
I know. It's been a long time.
Where are you calling from? I forget where you live.
Pasadena, California.
All right. You like it there?
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
What's the temp?
Oh, man. Today is so nice. It's like in the 60s.
Oh, shit.
Low 70s. Yeah, it's great.
Well, we were in about the mid-80s today, but it's humid and yuck. Well, so I'm encouraged by your work. I always have been. I mean, we hooked up. God, when was your year without God?
That was 2014, almost 4 years ago when I started that.
Right. So I think it was after the tail end of that. Somehow I got you on, and we talked, and I went to your open house, or what was it?
Oh, the launch party.
The launch party.
Life After God.
Yeah, for Life After God. You went from Year Without God to LAG, which has been I would say it's been a very beneficial organization for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's as I've gone from being unemployed to employed at
off and on,
a time or two. Yeah, you know how it goes. I've had more and less time to put into it. I'm just getting ready to start up a new sort of season of the podcast. So I've been, getting some things in order and making sure I've got some good things lined up. So it's been a little bit quiet, but we're getting ready to come back.
I'm encouraged by your work because the thing that you started is kind of self-propelling or something. Like, yeah, you've been busy, you've been in and out. But here's what's cool. Unlike ministry, where it's a cult of personality, centers around a charismatic leader, this thing just goes like, and I guess mostly I'm specifically talking about the Facebook site.
Right.
Those people really love and encourage one another on a regular basis, with or without you.
Yeah, and Brian Peck has a lot to do with that.
Absolutely.
He really stepped up early on and said, let me make some memes, to go along with your podcast, just to kind of help advertise the shows. And he was really responsible for taking the Life After God, the official Life After God Facebook page, the public one, from like 2,000 followers to like now over 10,000 followers, 11,000 followers. So he's really done a lot, and now he's doing his own thing and putting less time into Life After God, which is great. I mean, because he's doing some good stuff with his organization, Room to Thrive, which is, really hands-on therapy, coaching for people that are going through faith transition. But he's really been great, and I had a team of moderators that helped me with the private group. And, the private group, honestly, could grow so much faster if I didn't make it private. But I've really, we have to deliberately add a person.
Right. I have the same
each
thing.
Time we add someone to the, it's a bit of work because sometimes people recommend someone to the group. What's your story? Because you kind of want to make sure that, people aren't just kind of infiltrating to cause problems. And to be fair, I've never had any of that. We've never had any sort of like
troll
believers trying to get into the group. Yeah. Or any trolls or anything like that. So it's been good in part because we have been careful.
Yeah.
I
agree.
But it's a lot of work just to maintain that side of things. And then to try to keep it from being, a Christian bashing forum or, and then we've tried to say like, in the early stages, people are a bit more pissed off about being lied to or feeling deceived or outright abused by religion. And they are angry and they want to have a safe place to express that anger. And people that have moved on from that a little bit maybe don't appreciate it so much. So everybody's in a different place. And we have to give what I would have said in the past. We have to give grace, to people to allow them to be where they are and sort of remember that we were once at a different place and try to be understanding. Yep.
And that's just community in a nutshell. That's the difficulty of human cohabitation.
Yeah. If nothing else, I think Christian community and Christian ministry really did help me think of people in a generous way and try to meet them where they are. And even if they're like maybe annoying to me, just as a human, I'm annoyed by them. But, as a Christian minister, I was like, well, my job is to like meet them where they are and help them grow and help them find friendship and welcoming and all of that. Yeah. And I think I did that to a fault, to where I was more focused on other people than I was focused on myself. But I don't regret having learned those skills because I feel like the secular community really lacks that. Yep. And they really want, it's like almost a higher level of conformity sometimes is required.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a subject that actually I want to table, but we'll come back to. I'm going to write a note here. The atheist movement, quote unquote. But what came up just then? Okay, dealing with people. And I'm reading a book. I just had a guy on last week, and a good podcaster would read the book before the interview. But he came on, and I ended up reading his book afterwards. Well, mostly because I was so impressed, which would be the point, right? To have him on in a way that people listen and go, oh, I got to get that book. Well, that's the effect he had on me. And I listened to it. It was a guy named Andy Chaliff, and he wrote a book called The Last Letter. And it's kind of an eat, pray, love, because he ends up going to 7 different continents, or maybe all 7, or no, maybe not all 7. But anyway, he just travels. He's trying to. His mother was killed in a car accident when he was 18, and he just wanted to run away from his pain. And it's all about him getting in touch with his pain, which I think is the hot topic right now, and that is grief. And how we deal with grief. And I know that a lot of times it's always in the context of a loss of a loved one and death, or a breakup in a romantic relationship. But now we're seeing it, superimposed over the loss of God and the loss of that thing and the grief process. And there's a lot of theories out there. And this was good. And I'm listening to the book. Anyway, the point being is that I'm so inspired. And you get this when you read good people. When you read their stuff, whether it's poetry or prose or memoir or, just anything, their vibe, their personality comes through. And like if I'm in the car on an audiobook and I'm done with my commute and I kind of have to turn it off in mid, chapter, I get out of the car and I can kind of feel myself feeling a vibe that I get from that author. And it could be like negative, like I'm all anxious or I'm hateful or I'm mean or, it's made me mad or something, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I love myself. I love humanity. I mean, it's like a high. And that's what this book did for me. So when you were talking about dealing with people in your church, there's a couple things going on. There's a difference between judgment and assessment. And I really need to emphasize this for anybody who thinks I'm judgmental, because I am, but it's mostly because I'm assessing people. And I'm assessing. I want to be a person that I get to choose my life. I get to choose my friends. I want to be a person of boundaries. And if I don't find you interesting, I'm not saying you're evil. I'm not saying you're an asshole. I'm just saying I don't want to spend time with you, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think we weren't allowed that kind of assessment when we were Christians.
Right. Love everybody.
Yeah. You had to sort of love everybody and fit everyone in somehow. Like even if they were like consuming, 50% of your time, they had to be somehow part of it. I finally got to the place before I left the church where I was, I had established for myself some boundaries where I felt people were, harming the community, and I sort of found a way within myself to be okay with cutting them loose, letting them go.
Yeah.
I still struggle with this when it comes to ideological issues, where I only have so much time to read, and I only have so much time to educate myself about what's going on in the world. And as much as I would like to know, I was just saying to my girlfriend the other day, like, I really am kind of obsessed with these like right-wing hate groups and kind of what makes them tick. And it's so against my nature to think in the way that those groups do, that I'm sort of obsessed with not figuring out, I suppose, but trying to understand what makes people go that route. Mm-hmm. But I only have so much time. And if I fill my head with that all the time, I'm not putting other things into my knowledge that I need to have. So.
Right. And that's just the finite nature. But I will commend you for this. And I think this might have been Stephen Covey, but seek first to understand and second to be understood.
Yeah.
And I mean, if the world's going to change, if people are going to get along better, and if this chasm that America is under is going to start to come together, it's going to be because that very attitude. I'm curious as to how these motherfuckers got to this place, because I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that unless they're a psychopath, which is possible, but it's probably 1% of the human race or something, I don't know, or a sociopath, which might be more like 5 or 7%. But other than that, they're doing their best, and they actually, most of them, think, I know this to be true, of certain, white supremacists that I've read about or heard interviews with. They literally believe that they're doing the right thing, not only for the whites, but for the blacks.
Right.
They think they're being loving. And I think Westboro Baptist thinks they're being loving.
Yeah, I have a hard time figuring that out. Like with people, especially the public figures, people like Ben Shapiro, for example, who came to USC the other day.
Yeah.
Like, does he believe what he's saying, or is it a game to him? He's definitely book smart. So there's a part of me that's like, he must know that what he's saying isn't true. I'm thinking of a particular sentence that he says, and I'm like, well, that's not true. He must know that, but he's playing off of that to sort of rile up his fans. So I don't know. I always have a hard time, because I never want to believe bad faith about people, but there are, especially online, there's so much bad faith communication that it's hard to know even where to begin. Because if you assume that you're conversing with someone in good faith, there's a good chance you're wrong about that, and that you'll waste a lot of energy and breath earnestly engaging with someone about something, and then you realize, oh, they're not even working at this. They're just playing around.
Yeah. I know that we're talking like this is a charlatan, televangelist. Some of these guys absolutely know that they are literally just making money off these credulous old ladies, and that's just tough luck. That's on them. That they should have been more skeptical or something. And life is short, and let's just, I don't know what goes through these heads, but I think people like Alex Jones on InfoWars, absolutely. I used to think it about Rush Limbaugh. I just believed that they knew exactly what they were doing. It was a role that they played, almost like Colbert when he did his show. It was a role, except everybody knew it was a role, and it was clear that it was a role, and he was mocking, the opposite. These guys, I don't know. I just think there's something there. And so when you go to, like you're saying, when you went out to hear Shapiro talk, it's like, what? Come on. No, come on, you can't believe that.
I know, it's crazy.
You're smart enough to know that you're and there's something about, this might be a derailment, but my wife tells a story about a friend of hers, and there's something about being really sweetly, kindly, benefit of the doubtedly a believer in your friends. And just a believer, and just come to the table. And this is kind of vulnerable, right? Like if you come guarded, That's the opposite of vulnerable. So it's a loving thing to do, to be engaging with somebody where you're actually engaging. Like you just said, when you're talking to those people, they're not really there. You're engaging, and they're just literally still playing a game with your head. Anyway, this friend of hers told a story. It was a really sad story, to the point where, and we're talking teenagers, to where it made Mindy cry. Like literally, she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry that happened to you." And then the girl literally went, "I just made it up," and like mocked her.
Oh my gosh.
Right? It's like a stab to the fucking heart. And what a betrayal of trust. And that's what we're talking about.
Cruel. It
is cruel, and that's why I think Alex Jones is cruel. I think anybody, if Shapiro knows what he's doing, just, I don't know. This is a fucked up world now. So this is a sociopath thing, though, to me. That would be sociopathic, because I'm wanting to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I'm wanting to say everybody's fighting their own battle and everybody's doing the best they can. And that's just not true sometimes, and I hate that.
Oh, and I should probably say too that especially Twitter gets me sucked in sometimes, and there have been more than one occasion when I've gotten pulled into that rhetoric too of argumentation in bad faith, or just trolling a little bit. And there's a little bit of a seduction to trolling, and you realize you got someone on the ropes, and you just kind of play with them a little bit. And so, but I really have, and my girlfriend holds me accountable too. Like, I try not to do that too much, because I think it's bad for the overall discourse. And I don't know if Twitter's redeemable at all, but in general, I think it's bad for the discourse, when we're not taking each other seriously or taking the issues seriously.
Yeah. And there's something to hide behind, right? I mean, it's not face to face, so there's something non-intimate.
Right.
Which could embolden people, been to a point where it's not really real.
Yeah.
I see you, and I always have since the first time I ever saw you in any kind of interview situation, as like the Year Without God, or even when I had you on. I've always known, because I am so much of an immature version of a 52-year-old that it's really like there's a lot of arrested development going on here, And I see people like you. You're probably what, 10? What are you, 45?
I just turned 47.
Okay. All right. So you're what? You're 5 years. Yeah, you're only 5 years younger than me.
5 years, yeah.
But I see you as just so much more mature, and you take the high road, and you're highly intellectual, and I see you as a person of integrity. But I have seen you in the last month, I have seen you say things on Twitter that I went, "Whoa, Ryan is getting riled up here,"
Oh man,
it was a little bit out of character. I mean, it's not a bad thing, because your character's so goddamn high, but it was enough to where it was like, whoa, somebody's got under his skin. And we should. This is fucked up what's happened to our country. I mean, there's some stuff here that is very worthy of rage. Is it not?
Yeah, I think that the context is extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
In my lifetime, in our lifetime, and I'm not saying that anything that we're going through right now is any worse than what other people have gone through, and certainly for people of color and for women, it's been far, far worse. And I hate to even use those sort of comparative terms of better and worse, because
right. There's no
we
point.
all experience the world as we experience it, and it's so what if your grief is a little bit worse than mine? I mean, mine feels like grief too. So
it's not a competition.
It's not a competition. But that being said, we are in extraordinary times. I think we can all agree. And I think even people on the right would probably feel there's just this polarization, and it's affected all kinds of different communities. And I guess I expected it in the Christian community. Like, I was on the left in the Christian community, and I came out of Christianity, I think mistakenly thinking that secularism and rationality and free thought would be more rational or more liberal or more progressive. And I think in general it is, but I think in the last few years we've really seen some fissures open within the skeptical movement or in the free thought movement, in as much as there is even a movement. And of course everybody wants to debate about whether there is such a thing and all of that. But what I do know for sure is that we have these organizations that are, formal organizations that organize, like my own organization that I work for, around principles of secularism and freedom of speech and freedom of expression and religion and all of that. That it's been challenging. We've been rocked by the same sort of sexual assault scandals that everybody else has. We've been, inundated with, if not outright alt-right types of, at least, pandering or platforming that type of ideology, race realism, and kind of some at least racist adjacent types of rhetoric, and all kind of in the name of like, we all just need to have a debate of all these ideas, and let's all just calm down and talk about, whether black people deserve to live, like that. That's like, and I'm like, no, we shouldn't talk. That's not a subject that I'm interested in discussing. That's not, to me, that's a once and done. Like, you think about that for 1 second and you think, no, of course they are, that was a thing that was solved, at least for most people, decades, centuries ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah. Why? And in the name of sort of edginess or like, well, I'm not afraid to approach any subject. And I don't think for me, it's about fear of approaching a subject. It's simply that the subject is closed. It's almost like, double jeopardy in a way. Like in a court of law, you can't be tried for the same crime twice. If you were acquitted or if you were at least found not guilty, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
Unless new evidence emerges, right? If someone finds the smoking gun, 5 years later, and they're like, now we can retry this person with the new evidence. And, from the time I started into this journey, there have been people talking about how, Bill Nye shouldn't have debated Ken Ham because it just gives Ken Ham a platform and a justification, or a kind of, it sort of gives a false sense that what Ken Ham is doing is science, when it's not science. And to debate him on the basis of science is, giving him too much credit. So this is, to bring up sort of genetic race science, for example, that's been debunked, several decades ago, as some kind of edgy thing that we all need to now talk about if we're really committed to free speech, is just ridiculous to me. And it doesn't serve any good purpose. Mm-hmm. But I definitely have let my frustration get the better of me at times. And
shock is not really the word. It was just a little bit up from your norm.
Yeah.
No, it was good. It was kind of fun. I was like, okay, he's human.
Well, and I'm also trying to, very sincerely, I'm trying to evaluate what my role is, so it's easy for me as a, privileged person, a cisgendered, straight white male, middle class, all the rest, to sort of sit back and let the world burn down around me, because I'm going to be the last one to catch fire, pretty much.
Yeah. That's a great question, though, because I know that we sometimes feel reluctant to jump in, and even as allies, because sometimes we do ally wrong.
Oh, yeah. And I do ally wrong all the time. And I think any purported ally that doesn't think they get it wrong a lot is just
not being a very good ally.
Self-aware enough yet. Right. And I've been there. I know that. And I'm a crappy ally a lot, too. I in ways that I'm not even sure I'm aware of until someone tells me. But I mean, that's the thing about being blind or being limited. Yeah. And we're all limited. But the thing about being a limited human being is that we don't know what we don't know. Or we can't see what we can't see. We can't see our blind spots. That's the definition of blind spots. So you need other people to come alongside you and say, hey, from my perspective, which is different than yours in XYZ ways, your behavior in this way to me indicates such and such. And you have to be a person that's at least somewhat open to hearing that type of stuff. And,
absolutely.
And I don't know that we all are. And I'm not always open to that. I get defensive as much as anybody else. But I think that we have to, be willing to stick our necks out as well and be willing to be wrong. And I think, a white woman who's in this work, anti-racism and anti-sexism work, told me, she's like, look, you need to get over your anxiety about getting it wrong. You're going to get it wrong. So let's just settle that right now. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to do the wrong thing. And that's just how it is. And you need to just, toughen up.
Yeah.
And
don't let that paralyze you.
Yeah. But also to leave, like in the case of like, say, sexual assault or whatever, to leave women out there to do all the battle for equality is not fair. And to leave people of color out there to do all the work. This is the whole thing around the organization Surge, which is white people organizing for anti-racism. And racism is a white problem, and white people need to do the heavy lifting on that issue. And misogyny and sexism is a male problem, and the men need to do the work.
It's so deep-seated in our culture, man, because like I know that one of the things that I've heard as far as what a white guy, or not just a white guy, just a guy, in the case of assault or something, and just they're saying, okay, when there's locker room talk going on, to quote our president,
right.
You as an ally, an advocate, you need to say something. Say, hey, let's not talk about her like that, or something like that. And I get that. And a part of me says I don't know, it smacks of censorship. And let's cover this up when it's kind of a Band-Aid, when it's much deeper than that. Like this person has been raised by their own father to see women a certain way. So us asking him to stop talking that way just sends it underground. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not so much about stopping talking that way or just being quiet. It's more about raising awareness about it, and to say, that thing you're saying, we've heard it all our lives, haven't we? We grew up that way, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we've always talked like that, haven't we? We've all done this, haven't we? But what it is can you see how it's contributing to like the fucked upness of everything? Like This is it. This is the seed of this thing that grows into Donald Trump. And it's not just shut up, stop saying that, but let's all just kind of like think for a minute about would we say that with the person present? And if not, why wouldn't we? And is that what we really think about women? And if so, that's something else, that we need to really look into.
Well, good point. You just that's a free podcast. Everybody just got a free tidbit there no, I'm serious. I got that. I got that. So back when we were talking about the movement, the atheist movement, and how disappointing it, some of us we thought, okay, we're out of the church and we're going to be we found our new tribe and our new peeps, and it can be disappointing when you realize, oh, it's the same here. It's the same, and wherever there's humans. I know I like to quote this Jesus quote where it says, where two or more gathered, there I am. And I want to say something along the lines of, where two or more gathered, shit's going to happen. I mean, we're a mess. And I think about our buddy Bart Campolo, and he talks about tribalism in a way that he's like, hey, tribalism can be evil because it's mob mentality, it's strength in numbers, it's feeling superior because you're with these people and those people, and it's my favorite Dr. Seuss book is The Star-Bellied Sneetches, which is all about superiority over somebody who doesn't have stars on theirs. Whereas Bart tries to salvage the notion that we're social creatures and that we are going to migrate or be magnetized to certain people. And there's nothing wrong with that, because actually, even now, is going back to my reference to grief, the grief book that I'm reading at now, which is called The Handbook on Grief, I think. The prescription there is don't do this alone. Share your pain out loud with another person and have them share their pain with you. I mean, so we know the prescription of community and fraternity and love but we also know that that's probably going to be maybe 5 or 6 people in your life at best.
Right.
So
I think as we get older too, I mean, I remember hearing Parker Palmer talk about this. I think it was Parker Palmer, or it might have been Henry Nouwen.
Yeah.
Either way, about getting older and needing fewer people in your life to validate you.
Yep.
And, when you're young, you surround yourself with people that make you feel good about yourself. And then again, that sounds like a judgment the way I just said that, but it's not really.
That's just reality.
We all do it. That's just reality. And then as you get older, hopefully, if you're growing up and becoming more mature, you're more comfortable being who you are, regardless of who endorses you. That, to have a couple good friends in your life who you don't have to explain every goddamn thing you're talking about. You don't have to justify every weird emotion that you have, is great. Like, you have a couple people And as you were saying that, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I think we misplace our loyalties in like heroes or figureheads or people at this sort of global scale, you know? So we have this atheist movement, and who are the figureheads in atheist movement? Well, maybe it was Richard Dawkins, or maybe it was Sam Harris or something. And then they say something that really is maybe kind of cruel, and maybe they didn't even mean it that way, or it was a poorly chosen expression, or maybe that really is truly who they are. And it disappoints us, and we think, well, that's not my hero. And well, now what am I going to do? You know, now we're right back where we were before. And the reality is, like, every time I travel, the thing that gives me hope, like I was just in Kansas City, and I was with the Kansas City Oasis crew. And I was like, wow, this is a great little group of people. And I'm sure and it's not that little, actually. There's a couple hundred people there. And I'm sure I would find plenty of things to disagree with them about, different ones of them. But it's not like they're all marching to the same beat and they're all on the same page. But in that local, small community, you can find a family or two, a handful of friends, and that's your community. Yep. And then if someone turns out to be a monster, then they're not in your community anymore. Yeah. So you just have to manage it like that, I think. Yeah. When we got here, it was hard because of, like, we didn't have any roots here. And I know at one point my wife said, we could leave here tomorrow and I wouldn't shed a tear. And that was a derogatory, that was, and so in order to have some roots, I was proactive. I literally sought out some people. I solicited them to be in a book club. That we never read a book. No, we did. But it was really just an excuse to get together where it didn't sound so creepy. when you're sending out that email of saying, "Hey, we're lonely. would you be my friend?"
Right. But like, it's beautiful when it works. Mr. Rogers. Yeah. Well, and speaking of Mr. Rogers, be my neighbor. You talk about that. Did you see the movie, the documentary? I did. Yeah. Is that not just the anti-Trump? Yeah, he was a man out of time. It felt like I felt like he's certainly not a man of our age, but I wonder if he was even a man of his age. Like he did his own thing, and I think even as I used to watch that show all the time as a kid, and I even think I had a sense that it was a little corny or whatever. Like even as a kid, yeah. But he didn't care. Like, he didn't care if it was corny. He didn't care if it was dorky. He had a mission that he was going to teach kids to get along with each other and be kind and forgive each other and help each other out. And that was his mission. Yeah. And what a breath of fresh air he was. That movie, or that documentary was amazing. Just one example. I think there was something very racist that had hit the news, and he just had such a huge, tender heart for loving one another and accepting people that are different. And way before his time, he saw that racism and it just disgusted him. And he does an episode where I guess it's a hot summer day, and he's got this little mini plastic pool for children, and he's taken off his shoes and socks and rolled up his pant legs and put his feet in it. And a friend of his comes by, and it's a black man, and he says, "Hey, you want put your feet in here?" And the camera focuses straight down on their feet next to each other in that pool, because actually that's what it was. It was, I think they were afraid there were people that wouldn't swim in the same pool with black people. Right, exactly. Yeah. He had these very prophetic ways of, without even addressing it directly, because he knew he was talking to children. Yeah. He undermined it by his own behavior, like to say, "I'm going to swim in the same pool as this man." Yeah. And if anybody gets upset about that, well, too bad, Yeah. That's the message I want to get across. I imagine that's the Jesus that you and I liked. It's not undermine, it's not usurp. What's the word that we used for Jesus as he kind of spoke truth to power? Like a subversive. Subversive, that's it. I mean, I think he was sort of like, whenever I think of subverting something, I think of like going under the foundation of a building and sort of without anybody noticing, like cutting away the dirt under the foundation until one day all of a sudden the building falls down and nobody knows why. Like, why did the building fall down? And Jesus was just slowly like undermining the authority of the religious and political leaders of his day, but just in these very like subtle ways that
it's almost that expression, that biblical expression, to him that has ears, let him hear, for those that don't have the eyes for it, they'll just miss it, and that was, according to the text, at least, the style that he employed.
And I didn't plan on going here, but I think that it's worth saying, and I know that, the people that listen to your show and mine, we sometimes need to give ourselves a break, because there was a lot of good reasons to not only believe in Christianity, but to stay in it for decades. And you just gave a couple. I think where you were going with that, for those who have ears to hear, the next thing I think of is his advice to not waste your breath on people that aren't really ready to hear it. When the student's ready, the teacher arrives, and that student's not ready, so don't cast your pearls before swine. That's just good fucking advice.
Yeah, and he was, and again, when I say he, to the
whatever this
out there, like
this caricature that
the
was
he
created.
I'm referring to is the person of the literature, right? The person of the King Arthur of the biblical story, as it were.
Yeah.
Was a person who was kind and gentle. What was the phrase of the prophet Isaiah was something like the bruised reed he would not crush, and smoking flax he would not extinguish. It was like he was very gentle to the bruised and broken people, and to the power was hard.
Yeah.
Like he dealt out his lessons and his teaching in different ways to different people.
Yeah.
And he's not this meek and mild guy. Sure, if you're like a prostitute who's been hauled out naked before a mob and threatened with being stoned, of course he's going to be gentle and kind to that person. But to the people who drug her out there, he's going to be harsh to them. So I think that's a good model.
Yeah, well, and why wouldn't it be? Because it's literally the best of that generation's human imagination, just projected onto a screen. I think whenever, if I have a thought that I think is just really profound, I did this when I was a kid, and I was afraid to say it. I'm talking about at my dinner table with my parents. I'm like maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I wanted to roll it out. I wanted to introduce it to see everybody's reaction, but I didn't want it to come from me in case they hated it or thought it was stupid. And so I would always say to my friend, that whole thing, I'm asking for a friend. But in this case, I was saying, my friend said something at school today, and I was testing it out on them. And I think that I think we can say, I don't know what we can say, but let's just say there was no Jesus, and he's literally just the amalgamation or the patchwork of almost a Frankenstein creation of a lot of different people's imaginations and projections and philosophies and axioms. I mean, they're saying stuff, and it just ends up over time getting attributed to Jesus.
Yep.
And my point being is that some of it was good shit. That's all I'm trying to say, is we got to cut ourselves some slack.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there mixed in with some bad stuff.
Absolutely. Imagine that.
Yeah, exactly.
Written by humans.
We do have this desire, don't we, for a kind of silver bullet, whether it's with philosophy and ethics or whether it's with political leaders. We want that president that we could elect that would really take us to the promised land, to use another biblical metaphor.
Here we go.
But there's no president like that. There's no king that we could crown that would solve all of our problems. We have to solve our problems. I mean, to me, this is the message of socialism, of real, true democracy, which is people rolling up their sleeves and solving their problems collectively together, and in a way that is fair and equitable. So, I think we always lust after that leader who will fix it for us. And
right.
Sorry, guys, there's nobody like that.
And that's kind of
Cass. It's not me.
No, hell yeah, hell no. That's kind of what we're saying about the cult of personality. That when we have these heroes, and then they disappoint, and way too much gravitas or put on any one person.
And I think people in the Me Too that have been outed in the Me Too movement, the men who have been found out, and I think sometimes our first reactions for the men, at least, or people that we have respected those men wrongly, but maybe innocently respected them not knowing, is to say, oh, that's so sad.
Yep.
That so and so turned out to be a complete creep and
let's just say it.
Violent
Louis C.K.
Yeah, or somebody it's like, what a bummer that he turned out to be that guy.
Right.
But in a way, he didn't deserve to be in that place. Like, he lucked out and didn't manage his fame very well. So fuck him, he's just one guy, and there's plenty more people where he came from that are maybe even funnier, or, you know what I mean? This whole fear of like, oh no, like, how will the secular movement get along without Lawrence Krauss? Like, just fine.
Yeah, just fine.
We'll get along. We'll be fine. Like, there's plenty of physicists out there who haven't gotten their shake, and women physicists, and other people that are doing really, really good work, that maybe they can step into a role where they can educate the rest of us about some things.
Yeah.
It's not like we're gonna all fall to pieces because one person, Obama's not the president anymore. What will we do? Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, not only are we not going to fall to pieces or our lives being ruined, I think what we're seeing with Kavanaugh this last week was everybody's worried about his life being ruined. And we could say that of like,
oh my God.
Isn't it sad that Louis C.K. is not going to be able to be the top comedian that he was all these years, or that Kavanaugh is going to have to go back to just being a state, judge or something. And anyway, yeah, just it's ridiculous what we...
Yeah, I mean, these misplaced concerns.
Yeah. I had friends, and, I think it's not too much has changed about these particular people, but I don't know if you've had these kind of friends, but they're just crazy. They're wild. And it's not just when they're drunk. They're just really, their sense of humor is whack. And they're the type of guys, I'll tell you one story. Two friends, they're going somewhere in a car, and this third guy that's a friend of theirs, but, they're just all three of them crazy. And he says, well, can you give me a ride to such and such? And they said, only if you show me your dick. And they,
oh my gosh.
And it's just funny to them. And it's three guys, so that's a little different. But, and the guy had to show him his dick before they'd let him in the car. And there's some wacko shit. And I can see Louis C.K. being just weird enough to where he flops it out and shows it to a woman or jacks off in front of him thinking that it's funny. I don't know. But I'm not trying to justify it. I'm not. I mean, here I am mansplaining, but I'm just saying it's weird, and I don't know what to do with it, and we're a fucking mess. The human race.
Yeah, and I don't think that the idea is that none of us deserve, like, Kavanaugh does not deserve to be a Supreme Court justice. That's a privilege that's conferred upon a very, very few people with outstanding
for a reason.
records. For a reason, and it doesn't even necessarily make you a bad person to say that you're not qualified to be a Supreme Court justice. It just means you're not qualified to be a Supreme Court justice. I mean, in Kavanaugh's case, it does mean he's a bad person, but this idea that, I deserve to stand in front of an audience of, 10,000 students at a university and spew my hatred all over the place. No, you don't. Like, nobody deserves that kind of platform. That's a gift or a privilege that's given to you if you earn it, or if society deems that, that you have something worthwhile to say. And of course, we do have, thankfully, free speech laws in our country that allows people to say really horrible things as long as they're not threatening to hurt someone and riling others up to hurt people. But nobody deserves to be given a job or a platform or anything else. Like, we deserve to be able to live and survive and have a livelihood and a roof over our heads and the basics of life. But Louis C.K. doesn't deserve to be a famous comedian.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've seen that's been kind of fascinating because of how fast it can switch and turn, and that is these accusations of the other camp that how fragile they are or how oversensitive or snowflakey they are. And so it's typically like the left is really fragile and easily offended or whatever. And yet I'm thinking of, like, with Kavanaugh just saying, I don't get to be the Supreme Court. I mean, it's like going to a job interview and the person across the desk says, we're going to pass. What? And it's like, no, it's my prerogative. I don't think you throw a fit when it's like, no, you don't deserve the job. Get out of my office or whatever. Good luck on your next, try. But this is not the end of your world, and it's not the end of mine. It's a simple no. Can you take it?
Well, yeah, and in the case of Kavanaugh, it could potentially be the end of the world for, thousands and thousands of people who will be affected by the decisions of the Supreme Court going forward. So,
yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's in a way it's more troubling even than the election of Donald Trump, because we can, in 4 years vote in somebody else. Hopefully. But, and I guess in Kavanaugh's case, there is some grounds to impeach him, but I seriously doubt that the Democrats will have the stomach for that.
Yeah. All right. So I meant to talk to you a long time ago about an hour ago, about your work with Secular Student Alliance and secular student groups on campuses. And that's kind of that's your new gig, right?
Yeah, for a year. I've just come up on year anniversary of starting with SSA, Secular Student Alliance, and that's what I've been doing for a year. And it feels like it's been longer than that, just because it's been very all-consuming.
You're not on a single campus, right? I mean, you're kind of nationwide, or what? Yeah.
So the organization is national. We're on about 300 campuses around the country, and we, manage and support and organize those chapters remotely over Facebook and email and video chat and all of that stuff. So I have two organizers that work with me. They have responsibility for about 100 chapters each that are sort of actively working with them. And I support them in various other ways and organize the national conference and do special projects and new program development and project development and resource development. So the three of us manage all of that, but it's great. And plus I'm also on the USC campus as the Humanist Chaplain. So I have my own little laboratory there, as it were, to kind of be immersed at a deeper level with the students, and then sort of pull back and sort of have this national opportunity to help out as well.
Cool. So you kind of inherited Bart Campolo's work there.
That's exactly right. Bart really laid the groundwork in a powerful way at USC, really took the organization that was already there, called like the Atheists and Agnostics of USC or something like that. Mm-hmm. He changed the name to Secular Student Fellowship, which I think is, indicative of Bart's passion and vision.
Right.
Which is that it's about fellowship. It's about community. And if you meet Bart for 5 minutes, you're going to know that that's the thing that he cares about the most. Yeah. And with good reason. And he's done a really fantastic job. And so that group is about, I just cooked Sunday dinner for them. There were about 25 students. We meet for dinner every other Sunday night on campus there at the Office of Religious Life. And then they meet every Monday for a discussion group. And then we're hosting the national conference there this coming summer.
Cool.
But yeah, they're a tight-knit group. They love one another. They have cool little rituals that they've developed and a real bond of friendship that they are doing a decent job of extending outwards to others. This is the trick of tribalism, to use that word again, is that the tight in-group bonds can also form sort of out-group sort of walls as well, and that's a balance that any group has to manage. It's not to say that community isn't worth it because it has these boundaries, but you have to figure out how to manage those boundaries in healthy ways. But they're doing a good job.
Yeah, and you don't want to. I mean, I think one of the things that we get accused of by maybe religious people is that we're proselyting just as much as they are.
Yeah, and this group really isn't into that. I mean, They sort of take their atheism for granted in a way, and and again, that can also appear smug.
Right. But I like the sound of that.
Any kind of knowledge can appear smug. Like if you know things that somebody else doesn't know, they're going to think that you're
totally,
showing them up or something. But it's like, it's funny how quickly my mind has changed. I meet people now and I just kind of assume they don't believe in God.
Yeah.
And when I find out they do, I'm kind of like, that's curious.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah. You seem like too. I'm making that shift too.
Rational person.
Yeah. Imagine that.
You seem like an otherwise rational person. I'm surprised that you. So they sort of take their atheism for granted, and then they just go on with the questions of, how do we manage our fear of death, and what do we do about loneliness, and how do we find joy, and what do we do with our hurt? Like all those topics that
that a religion addresses.
Humans humans just have those questions no matter what ideology you have.
Yeah. And I mean, I use the word pacified, and I really mean that literally, like a pacifier. I feel like that I had those needs, and Jesus came along and shoved a pacifier in my mouth to shut it up, and now that you take the pacifier out, those needs are still there, and you have to find, and here again, not to sound smug, but you have to find more honest ways to find joy and give your life meaning and overcome your fear of death, etc.
Figure out how to self-soothe.
Yeah, that's it. Were you ever a youth pastor?
No, I was never a youth pastor. I mean, I had youth that I worked with, but I never had that specific title.
Yeah. Well, I was primarily, for most of my time in ministry, it was with youth or whatever. But I guess in general, have you noticed anything different about what we might call the emerging generations, and whether they're X, Y, or millennials? I don't give a shit. But just, are you seeing anything as far as what might be trends in the culture of teens and post-teens?
I don't know if I do or not. I mean, I know that they're less religious, and I can definitely see that. I run into a surprising number of young adults and teens that were never religious. And I think our generation was more people who had been religious and left. Mm-hmm. I think we have more and more young people today that were never that religious to begin with.
Yeah.
They were perhaps in a household that they would have called religious, like there was a Bible in the house and they maybe went to church a handful of times, and if things got really bad they might have prayed or something like that, but certainly wasn't what you and I would have thought of as devoted Christians.
I know that we've chalked up a lot of that to just information access, like the internet.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it. Someone asked me why I thought that was happening, and I think that is a big part of it. And I also think that it's just a story running out of gas, and it just takes time.
I love that, but it did take 2,000 years, so that's a big gas tank.
Well, and I think certain kinds of cultural issues, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure I understand why, the LGBTQ question really has had a devastating impact on the church.
Yeah.
More than racism, because I think Christianity was sort of born in racism in America. So it was sort of like racism was more of a feature than a flaw and in Christianity. But LGBTQ stuff, like the people, the issues, the questions around it, like all of that, the church really drew a line there, and understandably, because the Bible is anti-gay,
sure,
as far as I can tell. So I understand why. I understand why the church would have drawn that line, but that has not been kind to their. I mean, that's been hard on the church, and I think they've just lost people over it. And I don't think young people are particularly in the mood to try to find the silver lining around something when the teaching of it is that their good friend who's gay is going to hell.
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, how much lipstick do you have to put on that idea to make it look good?
Yeah.
So I think that has been a major issue, and all the research bears that out. That of all the issues that people cite as the reason why they're estranged from religion, it's
how they handled that.
How they handle gay people, gay and trans people.
Yeah,
for sure.
So when you were saying that there's no need for them to find the silver lining, that ship has sailed, or that I felt that double jeopardy again. Like, we don't have to retry this, or this is, and I think in the progressive, maybe even the word progressive, is that we have moved on and some people haven't. And that is what I feel like is happening as far as, I don't know if we're a giant rope and the slack is taken out and then it yanks when it catches up and people get hurt and things break. But you can hear it in the fear of the slippery slope, and like if back maybe even in slavery, when they were like, well, if we start letting them free, what's going to happen next? Or if we
next
start,
thing they're going to want to vote.
Yeah, if we start drinking out of the same water fountains, and then we say, honestly, when I was a kid. And it's actually alive and well today, but it was absolutely the zeitgeist of American, especially rural, where I'm from, is just to completely ridicule fags, gays, faggots, it was just absolutely the worst thing you could be. And it was, right. was to be gay, that you were twisted, you were perverted, and you were just a deplorable thing. And so the Bible had won that generation with its terminology.
Right.
And then, I think even now, trans is probably another frontier that's going to be tough for people to make the transition. It's such a paradigm shift that sometimes old dogs can't learn new tricks, and it's just never going to make sense, and they're never going to accept it, and they're never going to be able to call that person they've known as a man all their life now a woman or whatever. And these are tectonic shifts in the culture that people are either afraid of, which is primarily the thing, or they just don't have the elasticity or the flexibility to grow or stretch, to use a new wineskin metaphor.
Right.
Well, and then there's what are we going to do next? We're going to marry our dog. That whole stupidity of the slippery slope,
Yeah, and I think, again, just looking back to my own experience, which I realize is, anecdotal and not, necessarily the case generally, but I do have a feeling that pluralism, it's easier to maintain a single story about the world when the people within your sphere of influence pretty much all look like you. Even something like, we talked about the internet already, but even something like the ease of air travel and of course immigration and pluralism sort of writ large. I mean, people have mosques being built in their communities where they never even heard of Islam, 30 years ago. And now there's a whole community of Muslims, our community. And I think the minute you start to say, well, these Buddhists don't have a God per se, or they have a different notion of what divine means, and yet they seem like really cool people and they seem like good people. And do I really think that those people are going to hell because they don't have my religion?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just harder to hold on to this idea that there's one path to the good life when you have so many people around you that seem to be contributing to society in positive ways, but hold radically different ideas about the ultimate. And atheism the same way. The more people that are atheists who are good people and contributing in positive ways to their community and raising their children and so forth, it's harder to maintain that belief system that says it's my way or the highway. And so I just think all of those things really do contribute to young adults today being, much less ideologically prone in terms of religion.
I don't know if it's an ism or not, but I think when I've heard white supremacists talk, if it's called separatism or something, but it's this belief that your culture is wonderful, beautiful, your gods are your gods, your temples are your temples, and your customs are your customs, but they just belong on your continent.
Just like isolationism or something, like I think, and this like anti-globalist, kind of mentality, and it's all, I think, a fear and a backlash against change, as it's happening in our world.
Yeah.
And
well, you're familiar with Ernest Becker's denial of death?
Oh yes.
So this is the answer to me. Like, this became my Bible because I have chosen a culture that gives my life meaning, and it feels warm and cozy and soft and comforting for me to go, I'm in the right place. I'm on the right team. I'm in the right tribe. I eat the right food. I wear the right clothes. I follow the right God. I sing the right songs. Oh, thank you. Oh, I feel so good. My fear of death is appeased. And when you build a tower, a temple, you sing a different song, you eat different food, you wear different clothes, you have different color skin. My security blanket, my security and my fear of death, that which was my immortality project, is now threatened. And so you really are, these are fighting words. I mean, you cut right to the crux of my existence. Yeah. And I can't bear to drive by your fucking temple.
Right. Yep. Yeah, because your very existence calls into question everything I hold dear.
You literally reflect back to me some doubts that I can't really manage anymore with you being around me.
Well, exactly. And I saw that happen to me personally. I feel like as I started into my experiment of like digging into my doubts and my questions and saying, I'm going to take a year. I don't think these questions and doubts are going to go away. So I'm going to take this year and explore them and dig into them. The anxiety that produced in people around me was really mystifying to me at first. And it was actually someone else who was still a Christian at the time who said, it's forcing people to address questions that they don't want to address. Your very existence, the presence of your experiment, your project, is forcing them to address things that they would prefer not to, or to push you away. And so to push the questions away, they now have to also push you away. Yeah. And I thought that was really profound. I don't think I wouldn't have gotten there that quickly had this person not mentioned that to me.
And I get that. I think that's beautiful, because you kind of had this naivete of like just literally going inside and saying, wow, I really need to do this, and I want to do this for me, and I kind of, this is my little experiment, unbeknownst to you that people are going to go, Ryan, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, exactly.
They literally took it personal.
Right. Yeah, they did. It was my project, but I did it publicly, and so they took it personally because I had represented to them. These were people that most of them that I knew personally already. Mm-hmm. So they knew me in this one way, and now I was going down this path that like really implicated them.
Yeah. I know there was others, like, and I had these kind of friends that came to me and they said, dude, I love you so much, and I know where this is going. This is not going to end well for you, and I'm just giving you caution. I had one dear pastor friend of mine, he just said, please don't do this, And I was like, I'm just, trying to be honest, and I don't believe in hell, I don't believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, and I don't believe in substitutionary atonement, and I'm just wondering if there's a Jesus that can survive without those pillars underneath him,
Yeah, I know. And it's a house of cards. And,
it turns out, yeah.
And I think more people realize it than will say so. And I think this is like maybe the open secret in a way that many religious leaders, they know that their whole project is on a sort of fragile foundation, and they have to shore it up all the time, and even if somebody like you or me, we're not out there to try to tear apart somebody's thing deliberately, just the questions themselves do that, and whether we intended it or not. So
yeah, our very existence. Yeah. All right, so I've enjoyed our talk, and I'm encouraged about the work there. I'm currently the staff advisor to the Secular Student Alliance at the Vanderbilt campus.
Yeah, and we've been very excited to have Vanderbilt back. For the longest time it was sort of dormant, and we couldn't quite figure out what was happening there. Yeah. And lately there's been a spike in activity, which is super exciting because I knew that you were there.
But I haven't been able to give it anything in the last. I've been there seven years as far as employed there. Yeah, there's been so much stuff going on in my personal life. And I live 45 minutes away, and so when I go home after work, or even on the weekends, I don't really want to go back to campus very bad. So I haven't really been any kind of part of the surge.
And I like what we're doing, and I know Tennessee's been the Secular America Votes campaign has been doing really well in Tennessee, and we've had a few of our chapters engaging around that, registering voters on campus, and we're going to switch here in a couple days from the effort to register voters, now that the deadlines are approaching, to more get out the vote campaign. Yeah. Trying to get our young people civically engaged, which is again a big part of I think what it means to be appropriately secular.
Yep, and a steward of your citizenship.
Yeah,
appreciate your work out there, man. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure to talk to you again, and let's catch up again soon.
Well, if you're ever in this area, and if I'm ever out there, we'll get a beer.
Absolutely.
All right,
anytime.
Man. Talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
You got bills and bouncing checks. Nothing's right and nothing's left to lose. But you got dues. You don't know what your future holds. You're getting tired and growing older too. But you got dues. You got dudes who know you better than you know yourself. We'll pick you up and dust you off when you could use some help. So when that weight gets heavy and you just don't know what to do, don't you worry, no, 'cause you got dudes. She won't ride and she won't call.
So that's my talk with Ryan Bell, and he is my friend, and I'm always intimidated to talk to smart people. And Ryan, somehow I'm still intimidated, but he makes me feel okay and normal, and that he's not going to think any less of me for not being able to keep up with him. But he's a good thing for the world. He's well-read, but his heart, you can hear his heart. And, you have to have conviction in order to be out there and put yourself out there like Ryan does. And his convictions I look up to and I watch to see, almost as a weather vane as to which way the wind's blowing, or at least the right wind, and try to track with like how. I know we don't want to be people who say, how am I supposed to think about this, and then go and sit under some guru. But, at the same time, I do lack understanding and comprehension sometimes of the complexities of what the fuck is going on, especially in the Trump era. And I just really look to certain people for at least some guidance. At the end of the day, I'm accountable for my own thinking and my own decision-making, of course, like the rest of us. But, people like Ryan, and not just people like Ryan, but Ryan. Ryan himself is one of those people that you're not going to go wrong watching and taking some cues from him. Anyway, good talk. Love him. Life After God. Very similar work to what I do here at Everyone's Agnostic, and we love and support each other's work because we're, brothers of a different mother. All right, that's our show. Have a great week. 2 weeks, actually. You won't hear from me for another 2 weeks. And that's how it's going to be for a while, if not the rest of the duration of this show. I don't know. But I love you guys. I really mean it. Have a good week. And heads up. And I think by the time the next episode comes out, we will know how the election went. And so, I don't know. I need some kind of relief from the pins and needles that I'm emotionally sitting on as the world crumbles before our eyes. But anyway, peace out.
You got bills and bouncing checks. Nothing's right and nothing's left to lose. But you got dues.